I'm such garbage. Because ironically, I always complain about the buttons on my shirts, and for once, on this camera angle, like, buttoning up, second to last button, actually, yeah, second to last button, looks really good from this angle? It does? It's weird, I don't know. Anyhow, oh, hello there, am I recording? Is this a video? Hello there, Riley friend, welcome back to Max Answers Running Advice Questions. Today, I got a really good question to Twitter, and I want to be talking about the idea of overcoming the shiny new idea problem. What is that? It's the concept of, like, you're focusing on one writing project, or we're writing a book right now, and then suddenly something happens, you get a new idea, it's shiny and new, and you're put in this terrible situation where you have to choose between the project you've been working on forever, all the emotional attachment you have to this project, and the shiny new idea that is always so pretty, always so tantalizing, and always so terrible. But of course, before we go anywhere, I'm to give you the formal disclaimer and remind you, as always, the following is merely just my advice, my opinion, and what works for me. Don't take it as gospel, instead take it as the ramblings of this person who has probably spent a total of like 15 minutes over the last year or so talking about button meta. You know, what each button means, and, you know, how and when should you button. Keep an eye out for my latest 45-minute tutorial on Vimeo on when and how to button your buttons. Talking crap about Vimeo like I even know. I just know that it's not YouTube, that's all I know about Vimeo. Alright, so with that silliness out of the way, let's dive right in, because I've been joking a lot, but this is actually a legitimate problem, and that's why I'm calling it a problem, because it's such a terrible choice, isn't it? It's a terrible choice to be in the middle of this project and you're literally battling your emotional attachment, all the work and time you have put into this project against this new, shiny, tantalizing... What is that word that I'm looking for? Not despair, not desire. What is the word that I'm looking for? It's part of the definition of the devil card of the tarot. Oh my god, what is it? What is that word? F it, I'm just gonna look it up now. What is that goddamn word? What is the goddamn word? By the way, I mentioned the devil card. I love the tarot. The tarot is so freaking cool. And I've actually thought about doing a video on the tarot, mostly because, to dispel a bunch of the silliness behind it, but mostly to do a kind of almost a study piece on what the tarot means, where it came from, and what each of the cards is supposed to symbolize. They're really just ultimately universal symbols that have existed forever. The word that I'm looking for, it's not desire. Temptation! The word I was looking for is temptation! If you were yelling at me the entire time, please feel free to go into the comments down below and let me know, and I'll give you 500 max points that you can spend at the Max store for exclusive Max DLC. You can buy alternative costumes for your Max. You can buy the maid outfit, the summer uniform, the winter uniform. Oh yeah, the winter uniform, the track and field outfit, and many other DLC costumes for your Max. I joke about that, but if I had the money, I would totally do like an app, like an iPhone or Android app that's kind of like a writing assistant, and it's just like, what is your writing problem? And then you can buy the DLC and they just give me tons of money. Yeah, I'm gonna get Plague working on that right now. Gotta get him working on that. I'm gonna make him make the app for me. So, okay, I could literally go down that rabbit hole of just jokes about DLC forever. Horse armor. Anyhow, so... the story ideas, shiny story ideas. Why is this a problem, and how can we go about doing stuff about it? I kind of feel like this is something that pretty much everyone, I think it's nearly downright impossible that you've been writing for a length of time longer than probably a month and you haven't experienced this. And it always shows up right around the point when you're writing a story, you've been working on it for a little while, and your excitement for that story lowers a little bit. And I just got really somber all of a sudden, and trust me, we're gonna get a little bit somber. My answer for this is not exactly what you're looking for, but it's the answer that has worked for me and has worked for a lot of my friends, and I'll tell you a story. Let me tell you a story. Anyhow, was that the narrator from the Borderlands games? Anyhow, you're working in this story, you've spent a good while, you're probably right in the middle of the story, right in like the second act that everybody hates to write. That's why I make my second acts as short as freaking possible. And you're right in there, and something happens. Somehow, somewhere, you get a story idea. It always comes to you when you're not looking for it. Spoilers, really good advice, right now. Stop the presses, Max. Advice right now. You want story ideas? You want to get an idea for a book? You don't have anything to write, you want to find something? Do something other than writing. Go read a book, watch a movie, watch random movies, play random video games, go wash the dishes, take your dog out for a walk, and you'll get a story. I promise you. Stories always come to me, and to all of my writing friends. In the act of living, never the act of writing. I believe that is a quote. Isabel Allende? Maybe. I don't know. That's a writing quote. 3 years of posting quotes on my blog has basically made me memorize every writing quote ever. Always the act of living. And in the act of living, you get a new story idea. And, of course, it's always so shiny, so pretty, so new. And you think to yourself, maybe I should write that story instead. Or worse, you think to yourself, maybe I can write them both at the same time. And I'm gonna be really straightforward with you right now. I love all of you. You're all wonderful writers, and you're trying your darnest. You're going out there. You're doing your thing. You're sharing your stories with the world. I don't know anybody. I don't know a single person. Maybe there's somebody out there, and I just don't know them. I don't know a single person who can write 2 stories at the same time, like at the very same time. I know people who go on hiatus. Like, for instance, Kitty she jumps back and forth between 2 stories. That's fine. That's the way she does things. And as I've always told you, this is just my point of view and my opinion. Prove me wrong, find your own way to do things, that's okay by me. No problem here. Make it work for you. In my personal experience, I've met a lot of writers, and I have never met anybody who can effectively write 2 stories at the same time. And I'm not talking about like the ridiculousness, like you're literally writing them at the same time. Don't be silly, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being focused on 2 stories at the very same moment. Or the very same project time, if you may. And I've never seen that happening. Why? Because I think that a story demands a lot of focus, and a story demands you to write it. And one of the problems, of course, always is that the newest story, the one that you're trying to write alongside your old project, it's always shiny, always new, always pretty, always beautiful, always so much more exciting and tantalizing. And I don't want to draw too many parallels with relationships, primarily because there's a lot of antiquated beliefs in relationships, and I'm not going to touch on that. Not because I've got anything against it, it's just not the place for this video. My thing is this. The new book that you're trying to write will always be more exciting, more interesting, more shiny than the book you're currently writing right now. Why is that? Well, I think a lot of that is the element of discovery. As I mentioned, writing is the act of discovery. You're telling the story to yourself. And the prospect, this shiny new story idea, can be anything. It can be a million different things. It could be so much more. As opposed to the story you're writing right now, which is almost a known quantity. You're writing it, especially if you're in the middle. If you're right in the middle, you know what it is, you know where it's going, you just have to finish walking you gotta finish walking the walk, basically. The shiny new idea is always gonna be really shiny, really pretty, but what happens when you start writing it? You start writing it and then you get acquainted to it, and as I mentioned, the act of discovery becomes more centralized, it becomes a known quantity. You get to the middle of that story, and probably another shiny story will show up. That cycle is something that is true to a lot of people. I've experienced that myself. I experienced that so intensely before I got really, really serious into writing. So now, if you may, allow me to take this as a great chance to start sliding in, transitioning, if you may, into my personal advice. How did I overcome the shiny new idea problem? How did I overcome the tantalizing temptation, yeah, nailed it, temptation of seeing the shiny new story idea and focusing on the project that I have right now instead of writing that. Because I experienced that. I experienced that a lot back before I got really, really, really serious into writing. And there was a long time, probably, was it 3 years? No, probably 2-3 years maybe. There was a long period where I didn't finish stories. There was this huge chunk of time when I would start them, I would drop them, write something else, something new and exciting, something entirely new, tantalizing, temptationing, desiring, and many other words that don't actually exist. And I would do that. I would do that entire cycle. There were probably like 5 or 6 first drafts that are just incomplete. And I hate myself for that, but I'll go into that in a moment. There came a point, and this happened in my life at a really good time. I was taking writing courses in college. And the writing course, one of my favorite writing courses, the goal was basically that every week you had to turn in 10 pages of writing for your really small 5 to 6 critique groups. Or actually 3 to 4 critique groups. And you would read each other's story, and my computer is reminding me that I gotta disable Flux. Anyhow.
Alert from Flux.
Yes, thank you, Flux. In this very particular class, there came a point in which I realized that I very, very easily was meeting the goal 10 pages is about 2,500 words. Not a lot. It's actually not a lot. I mean, at least for me. Don't take no offense. There came a point when I realized that I was meeting my goal, my weekly goal. I was meeting it, getting it done, and not writing anymore. I had become comfortable within the confines of this class, of this course. I had become really comfortable, and I wasn't writing more. This was probably 5 years ago, I think. And there came a point when I realized, and it was like the lowest point, the low point in my life, when I realized that things weren't going how I wanted to. Things was just, work was bad, life was bad, friends were even worse, and things just weren't working out for me. And there came a point when I realized that it was time to take control of my own life and to start doing the things that I wanted to do. And one of the things that I wanted to do was start finishing books. Because right now, and I don't want this to seem like a threat, but right now you're like, I have one half-finished draft. It probably won't be scary. When you have 6 of those sitting on your desk, you start noticing patterns. And I realized I have grown comfortable with this, and I don't want to be comfortable in writing. I want to keep expanding, keep growing, and become this ridiculous writer, to which I think I'm a little bit closer today. But there came a point, and I asked myself, I told myself, I want to start finishing stories. I nearly snapped my fan because I'm so like, ugh. I wanted to stop finishing stories. I start finishing stories, and I decided to dedicate more time to writing. I decided to make changes in my life, to sacrifice time so I could write more and focus on stories. Because ironically, and here's one of those things that nobody likes to hear, but I'm going to tell you right now, one of the elements of overcoming the new Shiny Idea project is to finish things faster. There are always going to be more story ideas on time. I'm just going to tell you this right now. I've got a folder. F that, lies to that. The entire reason, really, like 90% of the reason why I began doing daily story seeds on my blog a long time ago was because I had too many story ideas. Too bloody many story ideas. And the fact that I even published a book with 400 of them should be proof that there will always be more story ideas than time to write them. In that point in my life, I realized that I had to focus and I had to write something, because here's the dealio. And I love that I can just jump between jokes and being serious, but I'll just, serious time right now. I'm going to tell you something that this is a legitimate threat, and I'll just tell you this right now, as somber as I could possibly do it, okay? Your dream of being a writer, your dream of making a living and having a stable income that comes from writing, and having people who read your work, people who respect your work, people who look forward to reading your work, your world, your characters, none of that is ever going to happen if you don't finish books. That's just a fact. It's not going to happen unless you start finishing things. And that was the hardcore, deafening, destroying, heart-shattering realization that hit me in a coffee shop several years back, when my life was at its deepest, most terrible, despair-inducing bottom. I realized that my dreams would never happen. The things I wanted would never come unless I started finishing stories. Generally, when people talk about shiny new story ideas and having to choose between finishing what you have right now and starting a new one, it always becomes a matter of you had to decide, your options and whatnot. And for once, I'm just going to give you a biased call. Finish stories. Finishing a story, going the entire way, doing that journey will teach you more than starting 1,000 stories. Take this right now. That is my point of view. I stand by it. Finishing a book, and by the way, you want to know how ridiculous that time in my life was. When I finally focused, sat down, I started a book, I finished it in 14 days. I don't even know how I did it. I don't even know how I managed to write an entire book. Not a novella, not a novel, an entire book. I wrote that in 14 days. I don't even know how I did it. It's crazy, because ultimately, I can almost remember that feeling. I just wanted to finish something. And having the entire journey, I mean, I've done that several times now. I've written way more books after that. But finishing that journey, getting to the end, is an amazing feeling. It's almost an indescribable feeling, because it's coming to the end of this journey. It almost feels like the loss of a loved one. And I know that that's not something people want to compare this to, and I don't want to belittle the loss of somebody, but it's this entire cycle. It's this realization at the very end of finishing a book that this story is over. There may be more after this, sure, but this is a completed package that exists, a completed work. a thing that exists, a bundle of pages, that it's a gateway to another world, tangible magic that exists in the form of pages and letters and symbols and ink upon pages. It's amazing, it's beautiful, and it's this almost like the death of a loved one, the birth of a child, the creation of a new thing that exists and cannot be taken away because you made it and it's yours. And it shares an eternal link with you, and that is... It's a really sweet feeling. It actually is. And I want people to experience that. And I know that generally this conversation boils down to you gotta pick between the shiny idea or the idea that you've been working on. Honestly, from my perspective, after tons of jokes and tons of steering away from the subject, finish things. You gotta finish things. And if my little speech hasn't inspired you, then let me give you that threat one more time. Unless you finish stories, your dreams will never come true. Does that suck? Is that terrifying? Is that scary as hell? Yeah, it is. But that's what pushed me. That's what pushed me right over the edge. That's what made me write an entire book in 14 days. I don't even know how I did it. I don't even know how much I slept those 2 weeks. I remember that I would go to the coffee shop like every day. And I would just write and write and write and write and write and write during my lunches at work and write during my breaks at work and write the instant that I got home. And somehow, through the magic of just wanting something, do not ever let anybody tell you what you're capable and not capable of, because desire, the need to create something, can push people to do amazing things. That cold is killing me. I should really just rename this video Max threatens, threatening you to overcome the shiny new idea problem. I hope that this video wasn't as terrifying as I think it is, or at least from my point of view, I hope it wasn't as bad. Allow me to focus for a moment. Writing is a really a remarkable enriching experience, and it's amazing because you start out by telling the story to yourself and then you share it with the world. I personally, for me, writing is almost a really selfish experience, because to me, the most fun part is always writing it for myself and seeing firsthand the world in front of me. And I've learned to bask in that feeling, And I know that it sounds selfish, but to me, publishing the story and sharing it with the world is nice and all, but writing it first is the most fun to me. And developing the habit of enjoying the fun of this became something that I looked forward to. I looked forward to writing. For the first time in years of taking writing courses, I looked forward to writing. Writing became the way that I spend my free time. And now the way that I do things for a living. Writing, sharing stories, and enjoying the process of discovering this world that exists there. Between the pages and the letters and the blank ink, there exists a world and only you can find it. And if anything, I hope that this video has given you a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of a push to focus on that story. I know that it can be terrifying, and I know that there's so much temptation to start a new story. There's so much temptation to just go and start another story. It's shiny and pretty and new. Why not just do it? Well, because if you don't finish that story, if you don't finish stories, you're never going to move forward. Is that terrifying? Is that rude? Is that cruel of me to say that? Yes, it is. But sometimes you need to be reminded of that reality, because otherwise you're never going to move forward, There will always be more shiny new story ideas. There will always be tons of hundreds of thousands of shiny story ideas. Trust me, I ran a whole blog of story ideas. I published a book of story ideas. There will always be more story ideas on time. So, spend your time wisely and finish books. Finishing books will reward you more than starting 1,000 books. I'm repeating myself, but I'm saying that to just drive that nail harder and deeper in to get it through your thick skulls. I don't mean that. I'm just being silly. But anyhow, I hope that this video helped, and I hope that if anything, I gave you another point of view. If you have your own thoughts or ideas in this particular subject, please feel free to go down to the comments below and let us know. For the time being, though, I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for spending a little bit of your time with me. And I'll be seeing you in a sillier video later. Botching the outro. This video was super inspirational, but you botched the outro. Reshoot the whole video. The outro sucks. Redo the entire video.